I always knew that Goo Goo Dolls Iris was gonna be in the movie. I didn't know
Yeah.
where it was gonna be in the movie. Needle drops are very expensive, so to use, like, Goo Goo Dolls Iris, it's like,
Yeah.
we better make sure we're using it in the right spot. He, like, put it in that moment where it's like, "Oh my god, this is perfect." Like, he could be listening to this while he's waiting for his robot to be delivered. One, it's like, it's a hilarious song to be listening to by yourself.
Right.
Two, it's like, did he name it after the song? Or if
Mhm.
did he just kind of retroactively like, "Oh, there's a song like this." I
Yeah.
love that discussion. But then the third one that I don't think a lot of people think about is that song was written for the movie City of Angels starring Meg Ryan, which is Jack Quaid's mom.
Yeah,
So
that's
there's many
that's
layers to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that was something that you probably didn't even think about until after you were playing
No,
with it, right?
yeah. Once it was in, then we were like, "Oh my gosh!" Like I didn't even think about that. Like that's Meg Ryan movie.
I only have eyes for
First of all, let's just talk about Challengers for a second, because you just said it was your favorite movie of last year.
Yeah, caught me off guard completely.
Yeah.
Like it's a movie about tennis. I could give two shits about tennis. Like
Yeah,
it's like, but it's a love story. It's a love triangle. It's like the sexiest, horniest movie I've seen. And
Yeah.
like the score, like why
Yeah,
does
the
that
score.
work? I just love movies that like, Fargo is one of my all-time favorite movies, and that's a movie that could easily be like considered like a cartoon, like like the dialogue that's just like this very like absurd dialogue, and you have Carter Burwell's score that's
Yeah.
like I love any movie that just puts two elements together that don't seem to make sense. And you
Yeah.
have Trent Reznor's like really like transy like score, and then you add like the tennis, and it just makes sense. And yeah, I love how it's shot. The conversations feel like a tennis match.
Yeah,
it's like,
it's brilliant.
Fucking brilliant.
It's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
good.
yeah.
It's Well, it's interesting that you bring up the music aspect, because I thought that was something you utilized very well in
Oh, thank you.
Companion.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it was-
I shouldn't say thank you. I should say like that's Rishi Hirway, who did a fantastic job in figuring out the score, and that was not an easy needle to thread. Like
Yeah.
it was really tough to just really figure out what the sound of this movie was. And,
Right,
yeah.
because it's almost like it's part of the characters in a way, right? Like you
Yeah.
have to make it feel like an extension of them, but you don't want it. You don't want to be watching the film and be like, oh, this is the score,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
The
yeah,
film
yeah. You don't want to
example.
do you don't want the score to do the heavy lifting for sure, and
Right.
like holding your hand through like the emotional elements of it. So
Yeah.
that was yeah. I wish I could talk about like for hours about the the writing of the score and working
Yeah.
with Rishi and how brilliant he is.
Yeah, it was great. And then you also like weren't afraid to do the needle drop every now and then. And I thought those were also super effective.
Thank you.
Can you talk maybe a bit about the decision and like wanting to use songs like that everyone knows?
Yeah, well, I went in going like, this movie's not going to have a single needle drop, and then you start to edit, and you're like, this movie's very dry without needle drop. You realize like, oh, like there's a reason why you have to like, there's a moment where a song would be better than score or no music at all. And once we figured out the sound of the movie, once we figured out the score going in this direction, that was we called it like 70s gentle romance. Like that's like kind of vibe that I don't know why it worked, but it worked perfectly.
Yeah.
Like my first instinct was to do like a sci-fi score, and Rishi, God bless him, he tried it, just did not work. And so we just went back to the drawing board, landed on this, and it came from a place of like, what does this movie sound like? And we started thinking about like Carrie and Rosemary's Baby with these like lullabies, and then just taking it further and further and further. And then when we had the 70s feel to it, we just incorporated that for the needle drops too, and that's Rob Lurie like did an amazing job too, just figuring out taking that ball and just running with it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I liked how you infuse it with Sophie's character, with Iris, because you hear her like humming
Yeah,
when she's
yeah,
taking the shower
yeah.
and everything. So it just felt very alive. And then also where she gets her namesake, right? The
Yeah.
Goo Goo Dolls needle
Yeah.
drop. I thought that was an absolute brilliant reveal
you.
right there. Was
Thank
that
you.
something that was written into the script or something you discovered later?
No, I mean it's I didn't know it was going to be in that place. I always knew that Goo Goo Dolls Iris was going to be in the movie. I didn't know
Yeah.
where it was going to be in the movie. Like we were a low budget mindset. Like even though we have the New Line logo in front of us,
Right.
like it's still a low budget movie. And when you're a low budget movie, you have to spend your money carefully. And needle drops are very expensive. So to use like Goo Goo Dolls Iris, it's
Yeah.
like we better make sure we're using it in the right spot, and just playing around with where it belongs. So like I can't remember if it was the editor, me, or I did, but we like put it in that moment where it's like, oh my god, this is perfect. Like he could be listening to this while he's waiting for his robot to be delivered.
Yeah.
there's like a couple layers that are happening. Like one, it's like it's a hilarious song to be listening to by yourself. Two, it's like did he name it after the song, or if he did, he just kind of retroactively like, oh, there's a song like this.
Yeah.
I love that discussion. But then the third one that I don't think a lot of people think about is that song was written for the movie City of Angels, starring Meg Ryan, which is Jack Quaid's mom.
Oh,
So there's many layers to it.
Yeah. And that was something that you probably didn't even think about until after you were playing.
No,
it,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Once it was in, then we were like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even think about that. Like that's Meg Ryan movie.
Yeah. What was Jack's reaction to that?
I haven't talked to him about it yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll have to ask him. I'm talking to him.
Have you talked to him today?
No, he's my next one.
Oh,
so
yeah, bring that up. Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
that's
fun.
really cool. Yeah.
Spring it on him. See if he knows.
I kind of want to talk about the reveal, I guess, in the film, because I thought that first trailer that you guys put out was brilliant, and it kind of like set the stage for something that we weren't sure what was going to happen. You kind of get the sense that it's about this this relationship that you've obviously got the cabin in the woods, barbarian crew, everything. But then the second trailer drops, and it's obvious. I don't know how much say you have in those decisions, but then it is revealed that Iris is a robot. I guess, is that something that maybe you would have preferred to hold until the film's release, or do you feel like, no, this movie has enough reveals down the line that we can drop that at the beginning because it's revealed at the end of the first act? So, I don't know. I was just kind of curious about your take on that.
No, both. Like it's I have both sides. Like I knew, like being a realist, like there's so much competition, there's so much noise, there's Netflix and Hulu and a billion movies and TV shows, and you're competing against that, and so you can't really just be like, guys, trust us, this movie is great, and make this like kind of oblique trailer. Like it's going to get like film fans and people that are intrigued by that, but this is an IMAX movie. Like you can't it can't be it's not Strange Darling. Like we need to build that audience the first weekend, because it is a New Line movie, and so like you do have to like kind of be like, this is why you're going to spend $20. This is why you're going to get the babysitter. It's like this kind of movie. Right. I saw the movie with a audience at Beyond Fest that hadn't any idea what the movie was, and so when it was revealed like that she was a robot, you could hear the collective gasps, and it was like, oh my gosh, like I would love to live in a world where we just could bottle this up and have it in every screening, but unfortunately that's not the case. And the weird thing is, like, it just, the people that are disappointed that the trailer revealed that she's a robot, they're still talking about the movie.
Right,
like,
so you're still
there's
winning
articles
in that way.
about it.
Yeah,
So it's like it's getting a conversation, like, but I should say, like, I would prefer to not reveal it. I just know that you kind of have to.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, it's not like, you can't really, it's sometimes you do need to give that little bit of extra information, because it is a layer of intrigue that you get, because when you go watch the movie and then there's a couple of other reveals that happen in it, it's not, it doesn't ruin anything. It's just kind of, you're like, oh, that's interesting. So for me, I went in prior to, I believe, the first trailer, so I knew nothing really about it, and I was watching Iris and everything like that. I'm like, she's a vampire. I was like, that's definitely the way that this is going. And so
I love that, which would also tie into like the poster. If you still thought that with the wide eyes, you would be like, oh, maybe she is a robot. Sorry, maybe she is a vampire. That's hilarious. Well, that's so funny. I've never thought about, like, that's an awesome way into it. Like, maybe I'll write that version too.
Hey, it could work. I feel like there's still a way, and Sophie Thatcher for sure. I think
she's fantastic. But you're right. I mean, it's a first act reveal, and I think there's a beautiful thing that happens once you do drop that reveal, is now the people that know and the people that don't know, they're all on the same page now.
Right.
So now you have, like, an hour of movie where everyone doesn't know, like, what's going to happen next. And,
Well, I think what's interesting is because, I mean, Zach Cregger and all the Barbarian guys like helped bring this film to life. And when you put Barbarian when you put that label on a film like this, there's an innate kind of expectation, because that film was so wildly surprising and out of pocket, and you had no idea where it was going. So I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I think you read a draft of that film while you were working on this. So I'm curious, is there any sort of expectation that comes with having that, like, Barbarian label attached to it that you have to consider, or was it something that maybe it was like, oh, it's really cool that was received that way, that can just help us do our thing?
Yeah, I mean, like, it should be known that like when I read the Barbarian script, I didn't know that the Barbarian team would be producing the movie. So
Oh, okay.
so I'm writing Companion, and I'm writing it completely on spec. I have no producers. It's just something I'm writing as a writing sample. Like
Yeah.
if it gets made, great. But I just was, the purpose of it was exercise in writing something that I would want to see, because I
Right.
didn't, I love genre stuff, and I wasn't really getting the opportunity to write genre stuff. So it was, it was the point of it was to have a writing sample that represented the kinds of movies that I like.
Mhm.
And then just by chance, I had a friend of a friend, for someone that was connected to Boulder Light, that he was like, "Hey, I read the script. It's Barbarian. It's great."
Mhm.
Sends it to me as I'm writing Companion, and I'm like, "Oh my god, this script is fantastic. This is amazing." It does this like it's this incredible like POV switch halfway through the movie,
Yeah.
and it's sometimes as a writer you have to like get permission to just do something that excites you. If it there's all these rules for screenwriting: do this, do
Yeah.
that, do this, do that. Sometimes just forget about all that stuff and just do something that entertains yourself, and then it'll probably entertain other people. And so, it was great to read the Barbarian script to just get that, like that being invigorated by that. And that
Mhm.
actually helped finish Companion. So it's just a complete coincidence, and it's so serendipitous that
Yeah.
it would come full circle, and then they would become like the producers of the movie. So it like they inspired me, and then they
Mhm.
also I got to use like the Barbarian label to like, push the movie,
Yeah.
which is it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it is kind of cool how stuff like that works out.
Yeah.
And also, I think Zach was originally supposed to direct this,
Yeah.
right? So obviously, like this is your first foray into like feature filmmaking
Mhm.
like this. What was sort of the kicker that made him go, no, you should be the guy to do this. This is your story. You know what you're doing. I'm happy to produce it, but like you should really be the one bringing this film to life.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, like when I was writing the movie, I just wanted to get it made. Like I didn't
Right.
care about who directed it. Like to me, it was like whoever was going to get whatever director like increased the odds of it getting made was the right director. Like that's all I
Okay.
cared
Yeah.
about. So I didn't think of knowing that like a first time director, you're committing to a lower budget. You're probably not going to get a studio that wants to make it. It's going to have a very like indie like $2 million, $3 million
Mhm.
budget to it. So I was like, okay, I'm not gonna get in the way of this movie. And then the Barbarian team got involved. Zach reads it. He's like, okay, this is great. I want to direct it. And through that process, I got to sit down with him and kind of polish and refine. And I think from his point of view, sitting down with me, and I was very protective of it. And I would like
Yeah.
be like,
Yeah.
"What are you going to do with this scene? What are you going to do with this scene? This is how I imagine it." And I think
Right.
maybe I bugged him so much that he's like, maybe like maybe I would be best served as a producer, and like this guy should direct it.
Right.
But
Right.
like credit to him and his generosity, like he's the one that like really championed me and went to Bold Light
Yeah.
and went to Vertigo and said, I think this guy can direct it, and I might be better as a producer. And everyone was
Yeah.
was in agreement. And it's crazy that I'm sitting here now talking to you about the
Yeah.
movie. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean it's interesting. I mean, I feel like whenever you see the transition from a writer to a filmmaker, specifically if they're directing, their own material, it just works and everything
Mhm.
sort of falls into place. And I know so many writers have these very distinct visions of the projects that they write in their head, but they're always a little hesitant to get behind the camera.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Because it's directing is hard. It
Yeah.
is really hard. It's very stressful. It's a billion questions. It's very easy to hide behind a computer screen
Mhm.
and just go like, "Oh, this guy screwed it up." It's so
Shift the
much.
blame a
Yeah,
little,
you shift the
yeah.
blame to the director. It's
Yeah.
very easy. And I would do that too. I'd be like, "Oh, this guy screwed up my work." And
Yeah.
now, like like having gone through it, I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like
Yeah.
I full respect for every director, because it's a very lonely job, because you're just it's you making all the choices, and
Right.
you have to like decide like what's going to work and what's not going to work, and you're going back to the hotel and thinking about every night like, what did I screw up today, and how can I
Right,
not
right.
screw it up tomorrow? And
Yeah.
yeah.
It is kind of the writer's life amplified in a
Mhm.
sense.
Oh, yeah.
Because like obviously writing is a very lonely job
Yeah.
as well. But yeah, when you have all these other responsibilities, I'm sure it can get a bit.
Yeah.
It can be a lot.
Yeah. So many questions that you're not even thinking about.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk about something that you brought up a little bit earlier when we were talking about Barbarian, which was how like you were really inspired by how they kind of threw all the rules of screenwriting and
Mhm.
filmmaking kind of at the window. And I feel like the Coens are really good at that. Zach Cregger obviously brought that back to with Barbarian, and now you're kind of doing the same thing with Companion. Can you talk about just the creative fulfillment of being able to just say, you know what, this is how things are done, but this is like how the vision is in my head. And I feel like the overall impact is going to be a lot better if people watch it this way. I mean, it's weird that for a creative art form like filmmaking, we're so beholden to rules, you know? It's just so it's inspiring to see, you know, you
Yeah,
and all
thank you.
these guys do stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, the Coen brothers are my all-time favorite, you know? Like,
Mhm.
I like people that like, play with genre, and it's just yeah, that's just how my brain works, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, like, the very first draft of Companion was there was no humor in it, the heist wasn't in it,
Really?
it was just a kind of a Black Mirror episode, and it just
Mhm.
wasn't working, and it wasn't until I went back and said, like, you know, what's missing from this? And it was, you know, the irony is that I went in trying to write something that represented my voice, and I was denying my voice, you know, as
Yeah, that's how it's always how it
I
works.
don't
Yeah,
know, like,
yeah, I
I
get
guess
that.
because comedy is, like, the thing that comes easy to me that I
Yeah.
just thought that that's probably means it doesn't belong in there, and
Mhm.
so I just as soon as I went back and just started adding the humor to it and finding, like, the absurdity in the situations and just, you know, calling attention to that, and that's, like,
Mhm.
you know, that's my favorite kind of comedy. As soon as I added that flavor to it, it really started to take flight and, like, feel like something special, so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, definitely. I can't imagine a draft of this without the comedy.
Yeah,
It
it's
it is
bad, yeah,
so
yeah. Hopefully,
it's
it never
bad.
gets like, no one reads it, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Real quickly, because you mentioned Black Mirror, was this something that you ever tried to pitch to them as a Black Mirror
Mm-mm,
episode?
no, no,
No?
no, yeah,
Oh, that's
no.
interesting. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the AI aspect of it because
Mhm.
it's obviously something that's we're dealing with right now to the point where like a film like The Brutalist is being discredited
Yeah,
because of
yeah.
something that is very common
Yeah.
practice in post production. Um, I'm curious, like what kind of came first, you know, the chicken or the egg? Like, do you think that were you interested more in talking about how our own toxic relationships and the inability to take accountability with tools like this kind of dooms us in a relationship with artificial intelligence, or were you more interested in that artificial intelligence provides us with the perfect mirror to explore, our worst tendencies as humans?
Yeah, I mean, that all came late. That all
Yeah,
came really late because I'm a firm believer of you just need to write, like, the worst version of, like, that Black Mirror
yeah, yeah,
episode
yeah.
because you don't really know what the movie is about until you see what it is, you know,
Mhm.
right? To be perfectly honest, like, it came from a place of just, yeah, I wanted to make a writing sample, so you
Mhm.
don't you're not thinking I don't like to come in with themes, you know, because then I think it becomes very preachy and,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
fair.
like,
Yeah.
so I'm trying to think about this technology and how it would exist in this world and how, like, people would interact with it. And then, like, you start noticing, you know, things within the script that you didn't notice before. Like, for instance, like, I didn't realize I was telling a story about, like, my own imposter syndrome until after,
Mm.
like, a couple drafts. And I went back and looked and I was like, oh, yeah, this is a person who thinks that she's less than. And then the worst thing that she could actually, like, you know, every like you know I think when you're writing you should need to exploit your character's weaknesses, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
and her weakness was her imposter syndrome, so to
yeah.
find out that she actually is in the right, like she is less than because she's not human, like that
Hmm.
I didn't understand I was doing that, and then when you get that and then you go, okay, this is great, now I can kind of filter like everyone's kind of perspective and like what are the false fronts that they're presenting to each other, and
Mhm.
and you start to add that and you're getting new layers, and then you start exploring like Josh's relationship with Iris and why he's treating her the way she is,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like that's a future that could potentially be, you know, it's not that far off, like
No,
where
yeah.
our phones will look like human beings,
Yeah.
and how does that not just change your, you know, how you interact with your robot, but how does that change how you interact with human beings? If you know,
Right.
Josh objectifies everyone. You know, it's not an accident that he's not really reacting to like the violence that's going on around him. He's a very, you know, like bitter, like egotistical man, and
Yeah.
so like, you know, that is a very real possibility. Like
Mm.
if this technology existed, so.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I'm curious, like, how much did Jack and Sophie, with those two leads specifically, bring to the table? Like, how much did the characters change from when they came in and were offering their perspectives versus like how you had envisioned it?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. Like a lot. I mean, like, you know, I don't want to have any actor come to the table where I've made all the choices for them
Yeah,
already. Like I want to kind of, the metaphor I've used before is like hand over like a little deflated balloon. It's something, you know,
yeah,
it's there, or they can take it, they can fill it with air and provide the shape and the shading to it. But yeah, like for instance, like Sophie, like her mannerisms, she developed all that stuff on her own. Like the way she walks, how it has that kind of like odd feel
Yeah,
to
it's,
it. Like
yeah,
that's
yeah.
all her. Yeah, like like she's creating like like the realness of the character, and it just enriches it and enlivens it. And like same with Jack, it's like talking to him about who Josh is and like how he sees him. It not only informs him, but it informs me. And that's my favorite part of the process is the collaborative nature of filmmaking, because it's not just a director making all the decisions by themselves. It's
Yeah.
like making a conversation with everyone else.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I got to start wrapping up here, but
Yeah.
the last thing I want to ask you. So, movies that people should watch if they want to get a better understanding into your process for Companion. These can be films that they can either watch before going to see the film or maybe watch after they've seen the film. Do you have any like recommendations for people?
Yeah, I mean, one that comes to mind about like that handles like tonal shifts really well is the '60s movie that it's '68, I think, Charade,
Okay.
which is it's a thriller, but it's also really funny, and it definitely handles all these like tones all in one. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. Ex Machina for obvious reasons. Fargo, any Coen Brothers movie, but Fargo especially. It just takes all these like tones and puts it all together.
Yeah.
Like those three. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, those are 3 great picks.
Yeah.
Listen, Drew, I really appreciate your
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
This
yeah.
has been great.
So nice meeting you.
Yeah, nice meeting you as well. And congrats with the film.
Thank you.